Waters are fast-moving.
Unlike other big rallies,
Cockpit earlier at about 7 a.m. A group from the Coast Guard.
Welcome to #P8Vote 2013. Today on Rappler.
In this day and age, we should be long past the time of unilateral assertion and of coercion as a means of trying to back up that assertion.
U.S. State Secretary John Kerry slams China's rejection of international arbitration. Officials say the Philippines will hit growth targets. And the U.S. judge says the National Security Agency's collection of phone records is unconstitutional. Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry urges China to follow international law in its dispute with the Philippines over areas in the South China Sea. Kerry, in the Philippines for a two-day visit, says China should see the wisdom of participating in the arbitration process the Philippines raised with an international tribunal. China rejects this process, preferring bilateral talks instead.
And I hope that ultimately the leaders in China will see the wisdom of engaging in that activity to work through any claims in those institutions and through those laws that were set up specifically to resolve those kinds of claims. In this day and age, we should be long past the time of unilateral assertion and of coercion as a means of trying to back up that assertion.
In a joint media briefing with Philippine Foreign Secretary Albert Del Rosario, Kerry also praises the Philippines for filing the unprecedented case against China. He says the U.S. will, quote, stand with our friends in the region who resolve maritime disputes in a legal and peaceful process.
I think what's important, folks, is to, lower the intensity, avoid the provocations, work through international law, and for the claimants to stay united and to press international law as the means of resolving this. In my judgment, that is the best way to proceed.
To show its support, Kerry also says the United States pledges $40 million to boost maritime security in the Philippines. He also warns China against imposing an air defense zone over the South China Sea, similar to one it declared over disputed islands controlled by Japan in the East China Sea.
That the United States does not recognize that zone and does not accept it. The zone should not be implemented, and China should refrain from taking similar unilateral actions elsewhere in the region, and particularly over the South China Sea.
China's air defense identification zone requires passing aircraft to provide flight plans or face, quote, emergency defensive measures. UN leader Ban Ki-moon will visit Tacloban City this week to assess the damage from Typhoon Yolanda, known internationally as Haiyan. He will arrive in Manila Friday for talks with government leaders and will go to Tacloban Saturday for, quote, a first-hand assessment of the aftermath. The Philippine government says more than 6,000 people died in the November 8 typhoon, one of the strongest storms ever recorded. Nearly 1,800 people are still missing. UN Secretary General says he is organizing a major summit on climate change for September 23 next year, just ahead of the UN General Assembly. Despite the disasters that struck the Philippines in recent months, the government says the economy should grow 7% this year and between 6.5% and 7.5% next year. Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan says the 2013 gross domestic product growth should hit the upper limit of the 6% to 7% target. But he adds the losses in agriculture caused by the super typhoon are expected to hit growth in the near term. In a statement, Balisacan says, without all these crises, we could have achieved 7.3 to 7.5% growth this year. The government says the rehabilitation effort for typhoon-hit areas would require nearly $3 billion in government spending. Justice Secretary Laila de Lima tells the Commission on Elections, or the COMELEC, to file proper case proceedings to unseat local officials who failed to submit campaign spending reports. On Tuesday, de Lima says she submitted a memo opinion to the president after COMELEC issued an order for 424 local officials to leave their offices because they failed to submit an appropriate Statement of Election Contributions and Expenditures, or SOCE. Earlier, election lawyer George Garcia said the poll body does not have the authority to unseat sworn-in officials based on deficiencies in their SOCE. COMELEC sent letters to the Interior Secretary and House Speaker to implement the order. But de Lima says COMELEC's letter is not enough to remove the officials. She also says COMELEC should have checked its record-keeping system and sent prior notices before issuing the orders. Republic Act 7166 says all candidates, winning or losing, have to submit their SOCEs 30 days after the polls. A U.S. judge says the collection of phone records by the National Security Agency, or NSA, is unconstitutional. If upheld, the ruling by Judge Richard Leon could stop the NSA from gathering metadata on millions of private calls. The judge does not issue an injunction against the practice pending an appeal by the government. Documents provided by fugitive intelligence leaker Edward Snowden shows the extent of the NSA's surveillance programs. Leon says, "I cannot imagine a more indiscriminate and arbitrary invasion than this systematic and high-tech collection and retention of personal data on virtually every single citizen." Obama's administration criticized the leaks and said the NSA programs are not unconstitutional. Security officials also say the spying programs kept America safe from terrorist threats. Let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 2, American news program 60 Minutes comes under fire on Twitter for airing the side of the NSA. The 25-minute segment shows NSA officials addressing fears its surveillance violated people's privacy and showing off their equipment to CBS cameras. Critics on Twitter call the segment a quote, NSA whitewash and an embarrassing puff piece. The Guardian journalist Glenn Greenwald says the story's uncritical reverence for access is, quote, a new low. At number 3, a CNN opinion piece says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has taken power politics to new levels of brutality. CNN columnist Bruce Klingner says the execution of Jang Sung-tak, the second most powerful man in the country and uncle to the North Korean leader, is, quote, highly unusual, even by North Korean standards. Jang, who was accused of plotting a coup, was publicly humiliated and erased from the records in a move reminiscent of the Stalin-era Soviet Union. Klingner says the young Kim used Jang as the scapegoat for the country's economic problems. He adds Kim Jong-un is, quote, just as dangerous as his father and less predictable. And at number 9, Beyoncé's new self-titled album breaks iTunes records, selling more than 800,000 copies in just 3 days. Beyoncé surprised fans Friday by releasing an unannounced 5th solo album on iTunes, bypassing customary record rollouts and creating a sensation on the internet. Despite the lack of prior publicity, the visual album is an elaborate production, including videos shot around the world. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. Miss Philippines Bea Rose Santiago is crowned Miss International 2013. This is the 5th Miss International title for the Philippines and the 3rd major crown by a Filipina this year. Minutes before her crowning, Santiago delivers her final statement, thanking the global community for standing with the Philippines during the onslaught of the super typhoon. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter, which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel and your vote comes down to the mood navigator in the middle of the front page. That crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that have affected our readers and viewers the most in the last 24 hours. These 10 stories have gotten the most number of votes on their mood meter. If you take a look today, the story, well, this is an ongoing story, 13 things Meralco consumers should know about the hike. Large. 13% annoyed, but 77% angry. And the story that still has the most number of votes in the last 24 hours, Bus plunges off Skyway, lands on van. You have 25% sad, 66% angry. That red, bringing out the color of the day. Today, most people are angry. That is Rappler's Newscast for today, Tuesday, December 17th, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.